The Game of Life and How to Play It by Florence Scovel Shinn. An audiobook. Before we begin, take a slow breath. Set aside whatever is pressing on your mind, because what you are about to hear is not just a book. It is an invitation. An invitation to see your life, your words, your very thoughts in a completely new way. The book you are about to experience is called The Game of Life and How to Play It. It was written by Florence Scovel Shinn and first published in 1925. Florence was a remarkable woman, a New York artist turned spiritual teacher, whose ideas were so far ahead of her time that they feel just as alive and urgent today as they did a century ago. She was warm, witty, deeply practical, and utterly convinced of one great truth, that the invisible laws governing this universe are real, they are learnable, and every single one of us can use them to transform our lives. Florence did not write this book as a philosopher sitting in an ivory tower. She wrote it from the trenches of real human experience, from working with real people who were broke, heartbroken, sick, afraid, and lost. And in chapter after chapter, she shows us, with story after story, what happened when those same people learned to play the game differently. The game she speaks of is life itself. And the rules of that game, prosperity, love, faith, non-resistance, forgiveness, and perfect self-expression, are what she lays out, with breathtaking clarity, in the pages that follow. Get comfortable, open your heart, and let us begin. Chapter 1. The Game. Most people consider life a battle, a struggle, something to be fought through, endured, and survived. But Florence Scovel Shinn opens his book with a simple, startling idea. Life is not a battle at all. It is a game. And like any game, it cannot be played successfully without understanding the rules. Those rules, she tells us, are found throughout the Old and New Testaments, and at the heart of them is something Jesus Christ taught again and again. This is a great game of giving and receiving. Whatever a man sends out in word or deed will return to him. Whatever he gives, he will receive. Send out hate, and hate returns. Send out love, and love comes back. Speak criticism, and you will be criticized. Lie with honesty, and honesty will meet you. The boomerang is always in motion. And then Florence introduces something even more powerful, the imaging faculty, the imagination. She calls it the scissors of the mind, because it is ever cutting day by day, shaping the pictures we hold inside us. And sooner or later, every picture we hold in our imagination becomes real in our outer world. She tells the story of a man who feared a rare and terrible disease. He read about it constantly, thought about it, pictured it, until one day it appeared in his own body and he died, not from fate, but from his own distorted imagination. To make this clear, Florence explains that the human mind operates on 3 levels. The first is the subconscious mind. This is pure power, without direction, like electricity or steam. It does exactly what it is told, through whatever we feel deeply or imagine clearly. It carries out its instructions in the most minute and faithful detail. She illustrates this with the story of a woman who, as a little girl, used to play act at being a widow. She dressed in black, wore a long veil, and played this game so thoroughly and so often that the image was impressed deep into her subconscious. She grew up, fell deeply in love, and married a wonderful man, and then in a short time he died. And there she was in black, wear a long veil, just as she had always imagined. The subconscious mind has no sense of humor. It simply delivers the pictures it has been given. The second level is the conscious mind, what Florence calls a mortal or carnal mind. This is the part of us that sees life as it appears to be, full of lack, sickness, death, and limitation. This is the mind that worries and doubts, and left unchecked, it fills the subconscious with pictures of everything we do not want. The third level is the superconscious mind, the God mind within each person. This is the realm of perfect ideas, the divine design. Plato called it the perfect pattern. It is the highest vision of who you truly are and what your life can truly become. And it often flashes across the conscious mind as something that feels too wonderful to be true, a dream that seems just out of reach. Florence says that feeling is not wishful thinking. It is your true destiny, flashing to you from the infinite intelligence within. She shares a beautiful story here. A woman came to Florence desperately wanting her to speak the word that a certain man, she called him A.B., would marry her. Florence gently declined. She explained that forcing a specific person would be a violation of spiritual law, and instead spoke the word for the right man, the divine selection, the man who belonged to this woman by divine right. Time passed. The woman saw A.B. often, but something odd began to happen. He started to seem less wonderful to her, less magnetic, less everything she had once thought he was. And then she met someone new, a man who fell in love with her immediately, who said all the things she had always longed to hear. She forgot all about A.B., and she was happy. This is the law of substitution. When a right idea replaces a wrong one, there is no loss, only gain. Florence then turns to the power of spoken words. The Bible says, "By your words you are justified, and by your words you are condemned." And she takes this seriously, deadly seriously. She shares the story of a woman who once lived in a beautiful home, surrounded by lovely things and plenty of money. But over the years, she had grown weary of managing her household, and she had taken to saying, often and carelessly, that she was sick and tired of things, that she wished she could just live in a trunk. And when Florence met her, that is exactly what she was doing, living in a trunk. She had spoken herself into her own diminished life. Then Florence gives us the other side of the coin. A woman came to her on a sweltering summer day, worn out, dejected, with just $8 to her name. Florence blessed those $8 and spoke the word for abundance. Then she asked the woman what her hunch said to do. The woman said she felt drawn to go home to a distant city. Every practical voice said stay in New York. Look for work, be sensible. But Florence told her, never violate a hunch. And so the woman followed that inner leading. Through a seemingly chance reconnection with an old family friend, thousands of dollars came to her in the most miraculous way. She had arrived with $8 in a hunch, and she went home wealthy. Standing between every man and his highest ideals, says Florence, is only one thing: doubt and fear. Nothing else. When man can wish without worrying, every desire will be instantly fulfilled. The object of the game is to see clearly your good, and to dissolve all mental pictures of evil, to impress the subconscious with the realization of good. And she closes this first chapter with declaration, one she invites every reader to speak aloud with power and conviction. I now smash and demolish every untrue record in my subconscious mind. They shall return to the dust heap of their native nothingness. I now make my perfect records through the Christ within, the records of health, wealth, love, and perfect self-expression. This is a square of life, the game begun. Chapter 2, The Law of Prosperity.
one of the greatest messages ever given to humanity through the scriptures, Florence tells us, is simply this: God is man's supply, and through the spoken word, man can release all that belongs to him by divine right. But he must have perfect faith in his spoken word. The prophet Isaiah declared, "My word shall not return unto me void, but shall accomplish that whereunto it is sent." Florence reminds us that words and thoughts are a tremendous vibratory force, ever molding man's body, ever shaping his affairs. She tells the story of a woman who came to her in great distress. She was to be sued in 2 weeks for $3,000 and had no way to get the money. Florence spoke the word. She gave thanks that the woman would receive the exact sum at the right time in the right way. And then she told the woman, "You must have perfect faith, and you must act your perfect faith." The 15th came, and no money had appeared. The woman was desperate. Florence told her to go to lunch at a fine restaurant, to order generously, to act as though the money had already arrived, because in divine mind it had. The woman hesitated, but she went. The next morning, an unexpected visitor came to her door, a cousin. Turning away after receiving no answer, was called back by the maid. The cousin sat and chatted for an hour, and just as he was leaving, he casually asked how finances were going. She told him she needed money, and he offered her $3,000 at the start of the following month. Not in time, she thought, but Florence kept speaking the word, declaring that spirit is never too late, that the money had already been received on the invisible plane. And the next morning, the cousin called again and invited her to his office right away. By that afternoon, $3,000 sat in her bank account, and she was writing checks as fast as her joy would let her. Florence draws an important lesson here. If you ask for success but prepare for failure, you will get what you have prepared for. One man came to her asking her to speak the word that a debt will be wiped out. Yet he spent all his time mentally rehearsing what he would say to the creditor when he did not pay. He was neutralizing every affirmation with his own imagination. He should have seen himself paying the debt joyfully, freely. This leads Florence to one of the Bible's most fascinating stories. 3 kings in the desert, without water for their men and horses, who were told by the prophet Elisha, "You shall not see wind, neither shall you see rain, yet make this valley full of ditches. Dig the ditches before one drop of rain has fallen, before there is any sign of water." Man must prepare for the thing he has asked for, even when there is not the slightest sign of it. She illustrates this beautifully with the story of a woman in New York during a great apartment shortage. Friends pitied her, said it was nearly impossible, told her she would have put her furniture in storage, and she said calmly, "You needn't feel sorry for me. I am a Superman and I will get an apartment." She spoke the word, and then she dug her ditches. She went out and bought new blankets for the apartment she had not yet found, though the adverse mind whispered to her that it was foolish. She said to herself, "I will dig my ditches by buying the blankets," and she prepared for the apartment as though it were already hers. Out of over 200 applicants, she was the one chosen. The blankets showed active faith. Then Florence turns to a truth that many of us resist. The darkest hour comes just before the dawn. A big demonstration is often preceded by tormenting thoughts. Old fears rise up from the subconscious like an army of the aliens, storming through the mind. This is not a sign that the demonstration has failed. It is a sign that old error is being exposed and put out. This is the moment to rejoice, to give thanks before the evidence has appeared. Before you call, God answers. Every gift is already prepared, awaiting only man's recognition. The children of Israel could have all the land they could see, and every human being has only the land within their own mental vision. Florence closes this chapter with the great truth that no man can fail if some one person sees him successful and holds that vision without wavering. Many a great man has owed his success to a wife, a sister, or a friend, someone who believed in him when he could not believe in himself. Because one gets too close to his own affairs, he begins to doubt and fear. But the friend, the healer, the prayer partner stands further back and sees clearly, without wavering, the success that is already written in divine mind. Such is the power of the vision, and such is the power of one human being holding the light for another. Chapter 3, The Power of the Word. A person who truly knows the power of the Word becomes very careful of his conversation, very careful indeed, because words do not return void. They carry a vibratory force that molds and shapes everything they touch. And through a spoken word, man is constantly making laws for himself. Laws of success or failure, joy or sorrow, health or disease. Florence offers a charming and telling illustration. She knew a man who said, "I always miss a car. It invariably pulls out just as I arrive." His daughter, on the other hand, said, "I always catch a car. It's sure to come just as I get there." This had been going on for years. Each one had made a separate law for himself, one of failure, one of success. This is the psychology of superstition. The rabbit's foot and the horseshoe hold no power in themselves. But when a person speaks and believes that such a charm will bring good luck, they create expectancy in the subconscious, and the subconscious dutifully attracts the lucky situation. However, Florence cautions, this kind of thinking only works at a certain level of spiritual development. When a person truly grows in understanding, they must move past graven images and know that the only real power is God. She tells of 2 students in her class who have been experiencing great business success for months until everything collapsed. Investigating, she discovered they had each bought a lucky monkey and had been trusting in the monkey instead of God. She told them to throw the monkeys away and call on the law of forgiveness. They did, and things went well again. The point is this: there's only one power, God. And the moment we give our trust to any object, charm, or superstition instead of to that one power, we have divided our consciousness and weakened our demonstration. Florence then takes this deeper. She speaks of the terrible cost of destructive words. A friend of hers will often invite her to a gathering she called an old-fashioned chat, which turned out to be an hour of 500 to 1,000 destructive words: loss, lack, failure, sickness. Florence declined these invitations. She said, "I will gladly have a new-fashioned chat and talk about what we want, not what we do not want." There is an old saying that man should use his words for only 3 purposes: to heal, to bless, and to prosper. What man says of others will be said of him. What he wishes for another, he is wishing for himself. Curses like chickens come home to roost.
And Florence goes further still. The body itself can be renewed and transformed to the spoken word. Disease can be completely wiped out of consciousness, because every disease has a mental correspondence. To heal the body, one must first heal the soul, and the soul, in Florence's teaching, is the subconscious mind. She gives a remarkable example. A woman on the stage had suffered for years from a terrible skin disease that doctors called incurable. She had won a fine engagement and opened to rave reviews, and then, in a single day, was dismissed by the jealousy of a fellow actor. Hatred and resentment rose up in her like a flood, and she knew it. She cried out to God not to let her hate the man who had done this to her. And then she worked silently night after night until she found herself at peace with the man, with herself, with the whole world. On the third day, she was completely healed. Love, the fulfilling of the law, had done what medicine could not. Florence tells us that continual criticism causes rheumatism, that jealousy, hatred, and unforgiveness breed false growths and disease. That unforgiveness is the most prolific cause of illness there is. She makes this point with humor and weight. We need not ask what is the matter with someone, but who is the matter with them. And she gives the story of a woman who called herself poisoned by a bad oyster. Florence smiled and said, "You poisoned the oyster." The woman admitted she was in conflict with 19 different people. The inharmony within had attracted the inharmony without. As the within, so the without. She ends this chapter with a story of goodwill in action. A man selling machinery feared a rival with a competing product. Florence told him to stop all criticism of the rival, to bless him all day long, to be willing not to sell his own machine if it was not the divine idea. He went to the meeting fearless and non-resistant, sending goodwill to the other man. At the demonstration, the rival's machine refused to work, and the first man sold his without the slightest difficulty. Goodwill produces a great aura of protection around those who send it. No weapon formed against such a person shall prosper, because in blessing others, we destroy the enemies within ourselves, and therefore we have no enemies in the world without.
Chapter 4. The Law of Non-Resistance. Nothing on earth, says Florence, can resist an absolutely non-resistant person. The Chinese say that water is the most powerful element in nature because it is perfectly non-resistant. It can wear away a rock. It can sweep everything before it, and yet it never fights. It simply flows. Jesus Christ said, "Resist not evil," and Florence explains why. In reality, there is no evil, not as an independent power. Evil is a product of what she calls soul sleep, a kind of hypnosis of the race mind into believing in two powers, good and evil, when in truth there is only one. When we resist a situation, we give it power. We keep it alive with our attention and our struggle, and the situation stays with us until the resistance goes. She tells the story of a woman who was unhappy at home and disliked her critical, domineering mother. She ran away and got married, and then discovered that she had married her mother, that her husband was exactly like the woman she had fled. The situation had followed her because she had never stopped resisting it. The way out is to agree with the adversary quickly, to become undisturbed by the situation, so that it loses its energy and falls away. Florence gives a personal example here, and it is tender and funny. She was waiting one day for an important phone call, and she was resisting every incoming call that came in, afraid of interference. She managed things herself with anxiety and tense control, until she glanced at the phone and realized the receiver had been off the hook for an hour. Her own fear and resistance had disconnected the call entirely. She immediately blessed the situation. She baptized its success. She declared that she could not miss any call that belonged to her by divine right. Within minutes, the phone was reconnected, and 2 minutes after that, an important call came in, and an hour later, the call she had been waiting for. One ship's coming over a calm sea.
She speaks here of what she calls the law of transmutation through non-resistance. When faced with an adverse person or situation, instead of resisting, instead of seeing them as the enemy, one blesses them and baptizes the situation with success. One affirms, as there's only one power, God, this situation is here for my good and my prosperity. And the situation transforms. Florence also speaks beautifully about time. Living in the past is a failure method. Jesus said, now is the accepted time. Lot's wife looked back and turned to a pillar of salt. The robbers of time are the past and the future. Man should bless the past. Let it go, bless the future, and live fully in the now. She illustrates this with a woman who came to her grieving that she had no money for Christmas gifts, lamenting the previous year when she had plenty. Florence said, stop living in the past. Dig your ditches. Prepare for the presents. And the woman went out and bought wrapping paper and tinsel and Christmas seals, acting as though the gifts were coming. A few days before Christmas, several $100s arrived as a gift. The seals and the twine had opened the door. She closes this chapter with a morning affirmation she offers to everyone. Thy will be done this day. Today is a day of completion. I give thanks for this perfect day. Miracles shall follow miracle, and wonders shall never cease. Make this a daily habit, she says, and watch what happens to your life.
Chapter 5. The Law of Karma and the Law of Forgiveness. Man receives only that which he gives. The game of life is a game of boomerangs. Man's thoughts, his deeds, his words, all return to him, sooner or later, with astounding accuracy. This is a law of karma, a Sanskrit word that simply means come back. Whatever a man sows, that shall he also reap. Florence tells a delightful story shared by a friend who said, I make all my karma on my aunt. Whatever I say to her, someone says to me. One day at dinner, irritated by her aunt's chatter, she said firmly, no more talk. I wish to eat in peace. The very next day, lunching with a woman she was trying to impress, she was speaking animated and earnest, and the woman turned to her and said, no more talk. I wish to eat in peace. The law does not take a day off, and the more spiritually aware a person becomes, the more quickly the Lord turns to them, for they are more responsible for what they know. Florence then makes a distinction that is central to her teaching between the law of karma and the higher law, the law of grace, the law of forgiveness. Jesus Christ came to bring this higher law. Under karma, we reap what we have sown. Every cause produces its effect. Every action is consequence. But under grace, man is free from the law of cause and effect. He reaps where he is not sown. The gifts of God pour out upon him simply because he has come into alignment with love, with truth, with the divine mind. Florence illustrates the difference clearly. A woman with a powerful personal will have desired a house belonging to another man. She held the mental picture of herself living in that house for years. And in time, the man died and she moved in. But she paid a terrible karmic price. Her devoted husband died not long after, and the house became a burden and a misery. Her desire had been granted, but by personal will alone, not divine selection. And what is forced into manifestation through personal will always has an unsteady, unhappy quality. The right prayer would have been, if this house is mine by divine right, I cannot lose it. If it is not, give me its equivalent. That prayer puts the outcome in God's hands and brings only blessings.
Florence tells the story of a woman who received a counterfeit $20 bill at the bank and couldn't understand why she had attracted it, until she remembered she had sent a friend a batch of stage money as a joke. The law doesn't know about jokes. It simply returned what had been sent. But Florence called upon the law of forgiveness, declared that the woman was under grace and not under law, and sent her back to the bank to explain the situation with fearless confidence. The bank apologized and gave her a genuine bill. That is the power of forgiveness. It can neutralize karma. It can wipe out mistakes. And the chapter moves to order. Florence visited a woman seeking treatment for prosperity and found her home in chaos. She told her, "You will never become rich while living in disorder. Order is heaven's first law. Put your house in order." The woman did, thoroughly, joyfully, and very soon received a gift of money from a relative. External order reflects inner order, and inner order opens a channel for divine supply. Florence also addresses the spirituality of spending. Hoarding and saving do not protect wealth. They cause it to leak away. She tells of a man who spent almost all his money on a fur-lined coat, following an intuitive sense that it would link him to success. A month later, he received a $10,000 commission. The coat had made him feel rich, and in feeling rich, he became rich. She tells of another woman who refused to spend money on a Thanksgiving dinner she could have well afforded, choosing to save instead. And a few days later, the exact amount was stolen from her. The law always finds a way to move energy that has been blocked. Faith must precede the demonstration. According to your faith, be it unto you. And she ends this chapter with a great promise. Through the law of grace, man is set free from the endless cycle of sowing and reaping. He enters a state of bliss where all that the kingdom affords is his, not because he has earned it through perfect behavior, but because he has overcome the world thought, the race belief in sin, sickness, and death. He has seen through it, and the truth has made him free.
Chapter 5. The Law of Karma and the Law of Forgiveness. Man receives only that which he gives. The game of life is a game of boomerangs. Man's thoughts, his deeds, his words, all return to him, sooner or later, with astounding accuracy. This is a law of karma, a Sanskrit word that simply means come back. Whatever a man sows, that shall he also reap. Florence tells a delightful story shared by a friend who said, "I make all my karma on my aunt. Whatever I say to her, someone says to me." One day at dinner, irritated by her aunt's chatter, she said firmly, "No more talk. I wish to eat in peace." The very next day, lunching with a woman she was trying to impress, she was speaking animated and earnest, and the woman turned to her and said, "No more talk. I wish to eat in peace." The law does not take a day off, and the more spiritually aware a person becomes, the more quickly the Lord turns to them, for they are more responsible for what they know. Florence then makes a distinction that is central to her teaching between the law of karma and the higher law, the law of grace, the law of forgiveness. Jesus Christ came to bring this higher law. Under karma, we reap what we have sown. Every cause produces its effect. Every action is consequence. But under grace, man is free from the law of cause and effect. He reaps where he is not sown. The gifts of God pour out upon him simply because he has come into alignment with love, with truth, with the divine mind. Florence illustrates the difference clearly. A woman with a powerful personal will have desired a house belonging to another man. She held the mental picture of herself living in that house for years, and in time, The man died and she moved in, but she paid a terrible karmic price. Her devoted husband died not long after, and the house became a burden and a misery. Her desire had been granted, but by personal will alone, not divine selection. And what is forced into manifestation through personal will always has an unsteady, unhappy quality. The right prayer would have been, if this house is mine by divine right, I cannot lose it. If it is not, give me its equivalent. That prayer puts the outcome in God's hands and brings only blessings.
The statement should be repeated over and over, sometimes for hours, silently or aloud, with quietness and determination. Florence compares it to winding up a music box. We wind ourselves up with spoken words, and after a while, something shifts, the mental fog clears, vision returns, a feeling of relief comes, and then sooner or later, the manifestation of good appears, in health, in happiness, in supply. She addresses the darkness before the dawn, that moment when everything seems to go wrong just before a breakthrough. She says this is when the doubts and fears of the ages rise to the surface of the subconscious to be cleared out. It is not a sign of failure. It is a sign that the work is almost done. This is the moment to clap your cymbals, like Jehoshaphat, to give thanks that you are saved, even while you seem surrounded by the enemy, even when there is no evidence yet of the good that is coming. Active faith, she says, is always essential. Faith without works is dead. And she gives a beautiful story of a woman separated from her husband who loved him deeply, but could not reach him. She denied all appearance of separation, and she showed active faith by setting a place for him at her table every single day for over a year, impressing the subconscious with the picture of his return. One day he walked in. She also speaks of intuition that comes during prayer or treatment, a seemingly irrelevant thought, a small action, a hunch that doesn't seem connected to the problem. A student being treated for health received a thought to take her furniture out of storage and get an apartment. Florence saw the deeper meaning. Congestion of stored away things had created congestion in the body. Divine order in the affairs would restore divine order in the body. And she reminds us not to despise the day of small things. Before Columbus reached America, he saw birds and seaweed, signs of land. Before a demonstration comes as equivalent, a small token, a first hint, a door barely cracked. Do not mistake the sign for the demonstration itself, but welcome it. It means the shore is near. Man must walk fearlessly into what he has asked for. He must make himself believe. And in the end, when he can release the problem entirely, truly let go and let God, the manifestation comes swiftly, almost miraculously, in the twinkling of an eye. Chapter 7, Love. Every man on this planet is taking his initiation in love. Florence opens this chapter with a sweeping statement. Love is a cosmic phenomenon. It opens to man the fourth dimensional world, the world of the wondrous. And real love, she says, is selfless and free from fear. It pours itself out upon its object without demanding anything in return. Its joy is in the giving. Most of what passes for love in human life, Florence gently tells us, is something else. Possessiveness, jealousy, fear, control. And these things drive away the very people we claim to love. She tells the story of a woman whose beloved had left her for other women. The woman was consumed with jealousy and resentment, wishing suffering on the man who had hurt her. And Florence said to her plainly, "You are not loving that man. You are hating him." She counseled the woman to give him a perfect, unselfish love, to demand nothing, to send him blessings wherever he was, to stop criticizing and condemning him. The woman resisted. She said she would not bless him unless she knew exactly where he was. And Florence said, "Then that is not real love." But the woman worked at it. Week by week, she reached for something deeper. And Florence told her about a brotherhood in India who greeted each other not with good morning, but with, "I salute the divinity in you." They held this practice with every person they met, every wild animal they encountered, and were never harmed. Florence told the woman, "Salute the divinity in this man. See his divine self only. See him as God sees him, perfect, made in his image and likeness." Slowly, the woman shifted. She became more poised. The resentment began to lift. And then one day, unprompted, almost surprising herself, she said softly, "God bless the Cap wherever he is." Florence smiled. "That," she said, "is real love." A few weeks later, the woman wrote to Florence with news. "We are married." When Florence called on her, the woman exclaimed that one morning she had simply woken up and all the suffering was gone. That very evening, the man asked her to marry him. Within a week, they were wed, and she had never seen a more devoted man. The law of love is not sentimental. It is scientific. When the woman became a complete circle, whole within herself and no longer disturbed by the situation, love could flow freely, and it returned to her. Florence speaks next of a truth that runs through the entire book. No man is your enemy. No man is your friend. Every man is your teacher. The one who hurts us most is often teaching us the very quality we most need to develop. She speaks of disease rooted in hatred, resentment, and unforgiveness, of skin disease healed when goodwill flooded a woman's consciousness, of the woman who said she didn't care about being married and whose subconscious obligingly worked to get her unmarried. We get what we speak. We get what we feel. And often, when people receive what they wanted and then feel hurt, it is because they never truly felt it in the first place. She talks about money and love in the same breath, for they operate by the same law. The artist who paints only for money paints his worst work. The man who has contempt for money separates himself from it. Many artists, Florence observes, are poor precisely because they despise wealth and look down on those who have it. Money is God in manifestation, freedom from want and limitation. It must be kept in circulation and used rightly. Hoarding poisons the stream. She tells a cautionary tale of a very rich woman who owned 67 necklaces, all carefully wrapped in tissue paper, never worn. Her closets were full of clothes she never touched, and her arms were gradually becoming paralyzed from holding on. Eventually, she was declared unable to manage her own affairs. The law of use demands that we use what we've been given. When we violate that law, we lose the gift. All disease, all unhappiness, says Florence, comes from the violation of the law of love. Man's boomerangs of hate and resentment and criticism come back to him laden with sickness and sorrow. But love is a lost art waiting to be reclaimed. And the man with a knowledge of spiritual law knows it must be reclaimed. Because without love, as the scripture says, he has become as sounding brass and tinkling cymbals. Love and goodwill are invaluable in business, in family, in every area of life. Salute the divinity in every person you meet. See the angel in the marble of every difficult personality. And watch what happens when you do. Perfect love casteth out fear. And love is the fulfilling of the law. Chapter 8. Intuition or Guidance. There is nothing too great for the man who knows the power of his word and who follows his intuitive leads. Through the spoken word, he sets in motion unseen forces. Through intuition, he receives the specific instructions for the next step. And so intuition, or what Florence sometimes calls guidance, is not a mysterious or mystical gift reserved for a few. It is a spiritual faculty available to every human being. It does not explain itself. It does not give reasons. It simply points the way. Florence says, speak the word and then do nothing until you receive a definite lead. Do not try to manage every detail yourself. Instead, demand the lead. Say aloud, Infinite Spirit, reveal to me the way. Let me know if there is anything for me to do. And then watch. The answer may come through intuition, a quiet inner knowing. It may come through a chance remark from a stranger, a passage in a book that seems to leap off the page, a dream, a nudge, a sudden knowing. The answers are sometimes startlingly exact. She tells of a woman who asked for a large sum of money, spoke the word, and then asked for a definite lead. The thought came immediately. Give a certain friend who would help her spiritually $100. She waited to confirm this lead, and that very day a woman said to her, I gave someone $1 today, and it was just as much for me as it would be for you to give someone 100. The confirmation was unmistakable. She gave the 100, and shortly after, a large sum of money came to her in a remarkable way. Giving opens a way for receiving. Tithing, giving 1/10 of one's income, is one of the most reliable laws of increase in all of Florence's teaching. She had never known it to fail. The 10th goes forth and returns blessed and multiplied. But it must be given with love and genuine cheerfulness, because God loves a cheerful giver. Florence then turns to the mistake of limiting the channel through which supply can come. A woman asked for a position, just any position. Florence corrected her. Never ask for just a position. Ask for the right position, the one already planned in divine mind, the only one that will bring true satisfaction. This woman was given 3 offers simultaneously. She did not know which to choose until one morning she woke with the most specific guidance imaginable. She could smell Palm Beach. She had been there before and knew its fragrance. Florence said, if you can smell Palm Beach from New York, that is your lead. She accepted the Palm Beach position, and it was a great success. Florence shares a moment from her own life with warmth. One day, she felt a strong urge to go to a certain bakery a block away. The reasoning mind argued, there is nothing there you want, but she had learned not to reason. She went. She looked at everything, found nothing she wanted, and walking out, encountered a woman she had thought of often, someone who was in great need of the help Florence could give. She had gone for nothing at the bakery and found the real reason for going on the sidewalk outside. She speaks about the dangers of looking to the psychic plane for guidance. Horoscopes, numerology, fortune tellers. These keep man bound to plane of karma, the mortal and limited plane. She knew a man who should have been dead years ago, according to his horoscope. Yet he was alive and leading one of the great uplift movements of his country. The divine plan always transcends a human prediction. And she gives a statement for neutralizing false prophecy. Every false prophecy shall come to naught. Every plan my Father in heaven has not planned shall be dissolved and dissipated. The divine idea now comes to pass. Man's will, Florence says, is not meant to fight the universal will. it is meant to back it. I will let the will of God be done. And when man aligns his will with the divine will, everything becomes easy. The current carries him. The path opens. The chapter ends with a story of a student who, while Florence was giving a group treatment, received a lead to take her furniture out of storage and get an apartment. She had come for a health treatment, but Florence understood the congestion of stored things was creating congestion in the body. As she restored divine order in her affairs, health would return. What a marvelous and compassionate system. Every external condition speaks of an internal truth, and every intuitive lead, followed with faith, leads to freedom. Chapter 9, Perfect Self-Expression, or the Divine Design. There is for each man a perfect self-expression, a place which he and only he is to fill, something he and only he is to do. It is his destiny. This achievement exists as a perfect, complete idea in the mind of God, awaiting only man's recognition. And because the imaging faculty is a creative faculty, man must see the idea before it can manifest. He must hold the picture clearly, confidently, without wavering. Florence's highest demand for every student is this: let the divine design of your life now be made manifest. Let the genius within you be released. Let you see clearly the perfect plan. And she describes what that perfect plan always includes: health, wealth, love, and perfect self-expression. This is a square of life that brings complete and lasting happiness. She warns that when a person makes this demand, great changes may come, readjustments, upheavals, what might feel like a cyclone passing through the affairs. But these changes bring something wonderful in their wake, because they are clearing the way for the true and perfect destiny to emerge. Perfect self-expression will never feel like drudgery. It will feel like play. It will absorb you completely. And as man comes into the world financed by God, the supply needed for this expression will always be at hand. She tells the story of a man who came to her class and handed her a single cent. He said, "I have just 7 cents in the world, and I am giving you 1, for I have faith in the power of your spoken word. Speak the word for my perfect self-expression and prosperity." Florence spoke the word. A year later, he came back, successful, happy, carrying a roll of bills. Immediately after the word was spoken, a position had been offered him in a distant city. Health, happiness, and supply had followed. Florence also addresses parents. Never force a career or profession upon a child. The divine plan can be spoken for as early as childhood, even prenatally. A prenatal treatment might be: let the God in this child have perfect expression. Let the divine design of his mind, body, and affairs be made manifest throughout his life, throughout eternity. Then she speaks of fear, specifically stage fright, as one of the great obstacles to self-expression. Many a genius has been held back by self-consciousness, by the terror of being seen and judged. But through the spoken word, this fear can be overcome. And when it is, the person loses all self-consciousness and feels simply that they are a channel through which infinite intelligence expresses itself. The work comes through them rather than from them. She tells of a boy in her class who asked her to speak the word for his school examinations. She told him to affirm, "I am one with infinite intelligence. I know everything I should know on this subject." He used a statement for arithmetic, which was his weak point, and passed with the highest honors. But for history, where he felt confident, he relied on himself alone and received a poor mark. When man trusts his personality over the Father within, he meets the limits of his personality. She tells of a student who traveled abroad through many countries where she did not know the language. She called for guidance and protection every moment, and her affairs went smoothly and miraculously. Luggage was never lost. Accommodations were always perfect. Service was impeccable wherever she went. Then she returned to New York. Knowing the language, she felt God was no longer necessary. She managed things in an ordinary way, and everything went wrong. The practice of the presence of God must be continuous. In all your ways acknowledge Him. Nothing is too small, nothing too great. Florence speaks about the danger of pointing away, pinning all faith to one specific channel, and insisting that the manifestation come through that channel alone. This brings everything to a standstill. God's ways are not our ways. My way, not your way, is a command of infinite intelligence. And like electricity or steam, this power needs a non-resistant instrument to work through. Man is that instrument. She speaks of the virtue of poise. Poise is power, because it gives God power a chance to rush through man and accomplish its good pleasure. An angry man cannot think clearly. He makes wrong decisions and attracts failure. Poise allows inspiration to flow, and she addresses completion. Man often delays his demonstration through a belief in incompletion, a habit of beginning things and never finishing them. She told one student to go home and finish something she had started weeks ago as a symbol of her financial demonstration. The woman sewed until the project was done. Shortly after, the money arrived in an astonishing way. Her husband was paid his salary twice. The company was told, and they said, "Keep it." When man asks, believing he must receive, for God creates His own channels. And Florence closes this chapter with a vision of man as a master thinker, an artist who paints only divine designs upon the canvas of his mind, who holds these pictures with power and decision, who has perfect faith that nothing can mar their perfection, and that they shall manifest in his life as the ideal made real. This is the goal of the game of life, to bring heaven upon earth. And the rules are simple: fearless faith, non-resistance, and love. Chapter 10, Denials and Affirmations. All the good that is to be made manifest in man's life already exists as an accomplished fact in divine mind. It is waiting only for man's recognition, his spoken word, his decree, to be released into his experience. And so, says Florence, man must be careful what he decrees. Through his idle words, he can attract failure and misfortune just as easily as prosperity and joy. Through his deliberate, faithful affirmations, he can call forth everything his heart truly desires. She gives a foundational rule for making demands correctly. Always ask for the divine selection, not the specific house, the specific person, the specific job, but the right house, the right person, the right position. And always add, I give thanks it now manifests under grace in a perfect way. That final phrase matters enormously. Florence tells of a woman who demanded $1,000. Her daughter was injured, and the family received $1,000 in indemnity. The money came, but not in a perfect way. The demand should have included the words, in a perfect way. She urges students to enlarge their expectancies. Man limits himself by the smallness of his vision. She tells of a student who asked for $600 and received it, but afterward learned he had come very close to receiving 1,000. His spoken word had set the limit. They limited the Holy One of Israel. Wealth is a matter of consciousness. She tells the story of a French legend about a poor man given what he believed was a gold nugget by a traveler. He felt so rich that he never needed to sell it. He found work, prospered, and in time became genuinely wealthy. Years later, he gave the nugget away to another poor man who had it valued and discovered it was only brass. The first man had become rich through feeling rich. His consciousness of gold had manifested gold. Every man has within himself this gold nugget. It is his consciousness of abundance, of opulence. And when that consciousness is established firmly within him, the outer world must reflect it. Florence explains the mechanics of affirmation with great care. One should not plead or supplicate. One should give thanks, repeatedly and with conviction, as though the good is already received, because in divine mind it already is. Before you call, God answers. The Lord's Prayer itself is in the form of command and demand. Give us this day our daily bread. It ends in praise and thanksgiving. Prayer is command, demand, praise, and thanks. This is a full circuit. She tells of a woman who needed a large sum of money within a stated time and asked for a lead. Walking through a department store, she felt drawn to a beautiful pink enamel paper cutter. The thought came, I haven't a paper cutter good enough to open letters containing large checks. She bought it. She held it and had a flash of vision, herself opening an envelope containing exactly what she needed. In a few weeks the money arrived. The paper cutter was her bridge of active faith. She tells the story of a man spending the night in a farmhouse who felt suffocated in the night, smashed what he thought was a closed window, breathed in great draughts of fresh air, and slept wonderfully, only to find in the morning that he had smashed the glass of a bookcase. The window had remained shut. He had supplied himself with oxygen simply by believing he was breathing it. The subconscious mind, directed by faith, delivers the experience itself. Then Florence gives a series of affirmations, brief, clear, powerful statements that can be used to impress the subconscious with truth. She offers them simply as tools. For prosperity, God is my unfailing supply, and large sums of money come to me quickly, under grace, in perfect ways. For right conditions, every plan my Father in heaven has not planned shall be dissolved and dissipated, and the divine idea now comes to pass. For oneness, only that which is true of God is true of me, for I and the Father are one. For faith, as I am one with God, I am one with my good, for God is both the giver and the gift. I cannot separate the giver from the gift. For health, divine love flood my consciousness with health, and every cell in my body is filled with light. For guidance, I am divinely sensitive to my intuitive leads and give instant obedience to thy will. For right work, I have a perfect work in a perfect way. I give perfect service for perfect pay. And for freedom from all bondage, the simplest and perhaps most powerful of all, I cast his burden on the Christ within, and I go free. Man should never turn back once he has started to demonstrate. He should put his foot down and declare, Father, I will take nothing less than what I have asked for. He should stand firm when demonstrations seem delayed, when the darkness before the dawn feels heaviest. Having done all, stand. And Florence ends this book with words that feel like a benediction. She says that the simple rules of the game of life are fearless faith, non-resistance, and love. And she offers this final hope. May each reader now be freed from that thing which has held him in bondage through the ages, standing between him and his own. May he know the truth which makes him free, free to fulfill his destiny, free to bring into manifestation the divine design of his life. health, wealth, love, and perfect self-expression. Be transformed by the renewing of your mind. And so we come to the end of the game of life and how to play it by Florence Scovel Shinn. What a remarkable journey this has been. From the opening truth that life is not a battle but a game, to the final affirmation that every man can be free. Florence has laid before us a complete system for living, a science of the soul, a practical, powerful, joyful way of engaging with the invisible forces that shape everything we experience. At the heart of it all is one great idea. You are not a helpless victim of circumstance. You are a powerful creator, made in the image of an infinite and loving intelligence, endowed with a voice that can command the universe, and a heart capable of love that dissolves every obstacle in its path. Florence gave us the tools: the spoken word, active faith, non-resistance, the casting of burdens, the law of love, intuition followed with courage, and always, always giving thanks before the evidence appears, because the good is already done in the realm of divine mind. The game is yours to play, and you now know the rules. So speak your word with confidence. Hold your vision without wavering. Send love and goodwill to every person on your path. Follow your intuitive leads without hesitation. Cast your burdens and go free. And when the darkness before the dawn comes, as it will, clap your cymbals, give thanks, and know that your demonstration is on its way. You are not behind. You have not missed your chance. Your divine design is waiting, perfect and complete, for you to claim it. Health, wealth, love, and perfect self-expression. This is the square of life, and it is yours. Thank you so much for listening to this recording. If this audiobook has spoken to your heart and helped you on your journey, please take a moment to subscribe to the channel. It means the world, and it helps these messages reach more people who need them. Subscribe, share this with someone you love, and let us keep learning and growing together. Until next time, be fearless, be faithful, and play the game of life with everything you have.